Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I am here with my friend Marissa. We are going to be talking, you guys, about the real. We're going to have real discussions right now about the experience of people of color in America. I'm just looking down at my phone because I'm going to bring up the video in front of me. To be able to see if you guys have any questions. And of course, my fingers are like, I don't know what to do right now. So this conversation all started out, let me turn it down here. This conversation all started out last Sunday when I was just doing sort of like a check-in, kind of like a wellness check. Oh, my internet's unstable, of course. Why wouldn't it be? Where I was kind of just doing a wellness check because I hadn't heard from Marissa for a little while, and I was like, I wonder how she's doing. And you know, whenever you have those moments when you think of somebody, when they come into your mind, like it's wise to follow through on those things, because a lot of times the way that I see them anyway is they're very much like divine taps or God taps, like, hey, do your job. Do your job, like check in on each other, right? Like it's not really coming from within us. Well, it is coming from within us, but it's sort of like that divine thing, in my opinion. And so I reached out to her, and the response was not sort of, a lot of people, and Marissa knows that I mean it when I'm asking stuff like that. So I think that's why you gave me the real. But the response from most people whenever you ask stuff like that is like, I'm all right. I'm okay, you know, and then you really can't support somebody whenever if they're not going to give you anything. And Marissa, do you want to let them know kind of what you told me or what your experience has been in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah. First of all, whenever you reached out to me, I had been in a place where I had been holding back tears like for days. And then when I saw your message pop up, like, oh, here we go, really. And I'm very spiritual, and I believe in God. And I was like, I joked around, I was like, really, God, you sent Martha, because I'm gonna cry now. And it was just like an emotional release, because people had been messaging me for days, but these are people that I am in close contact with all the time. Like, our kids are together, and like we know each other, like we're elbow to elbow. And I'm like, Martha Krejci is states away, like states and states away. And so this is not like somebody that I'm going to see even in the next month or two. And she's reaching out to see how I am. And that really meant a lot to me. And I was just like, you know what? All of my other responses were, I'm fine, we're good, we're hanging in there, things are good, yada, yada, yada. But I just felt like I needed to just tell you that things were not okay. Things were not okay. And the reason they weren't okay is because my husband and I live in a very small town, and it's like everybody knows everybody else. And my kids are homeschooled. And so that even makes our circle even smaller. And just because of everything going around in the world, people were sharing different things on social media, different memes, very ugly things, different videos. And both me and my husband work on social media a lot. Like his business is a lot of networking, and mine is as well. And so getting on the computer or the phones to do work, it's like, okay, you're scrolling, and all you see is, another video of, from both sides of the story, from the white community and the black community, and these are our friends, right? And they're just spewing hate at each other. And so it's kind of like you're looking back and forth at like your friends, like, okay, you said this and you said that, and it's like, but nobody's talking to each other. It's just like yelling curse words in the wind. And my husband had to get off social media just to decompress. Like, he's like, I can't deal with this. Like, I cannot deal with this. And he also, because he worked in law enforcement for 2 years, like he was a police officer for 2 years, there's a lot of things that he's seeing that's just bringing back old memories of things that he's seen and had to experience in that. And it just wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy. It was very toxic. And we had both been just like in here, just keeping it within ourselves, in our own four walls, because we didn't want to take our kids out of the house. You didn't want to go. I mean, first my kids are scared of the masks from COVID, and now they're, I'm scared because I don't want to take them out of the house. And we run into, you know, friend A, and I just saw friend A post this very mean, racist thing on Facebook. And so one day I decided, I'm just going to reach out to one of them, one that I know I can talk to personally, and just ask her, are you aware that this, and I took a screenshot, what you said here was very, it could be very hurtful to some people, and I'm one of those people. And you can see when they read your message, and it took her a while to respond, and then she called me and we talked. And it was in that moment where I realized, this is a good person. This is a person that will give you her very last. It was a joke for her. Like it was a going joke in her family. It was a going joke between her and other people that we all knew. And it didn't hit her the way it hit me. And she had no idea. She had no idea. So, after we spent an hour on the phone talking, she shared her experience with me. I shared my experience with her. And it really opened her eyes to that what she was saying was very hurtful, not only to me, but probably to a lot of people in her circle. And they're just not saying anything. Yeah. And it really just dawned on me that more people probably just need to talk. Yeah. Instead of just listening to the rhetoric and following the news and seeing all of the negative things and the narrative that's being put out. Talk to your neighbor, see what they're experiencing, see what their experience has been, to try to figure out how they got to their conclusion. And I'm speaking very broad here. I'm speaking very broad because there's a lot of stuff going on, but that's how it all started. That's how it all started. And I was like, and then you mentioned, let's have a conversation with everyone. I was like, oh God.
Here goes Martha. Yeah, let's right. Take it live.
Right. Martha, she takes it from 0 to 100 in like 2 seconds. This is, and then I laughed. I was like, see, I knew that something big was gonna come of this, but I expected it.
Right. I appreciated our conversation, and I think that, and a lot of people, a lot of white people have reached out to me to say that the twist in the way that I explained how it flipped for me on Sunday, created a flip within themselves as well, like looking at it from a different perspective, because I grew up not like the all lives matter. I was saying that, right? Like I was not growing up because it wasn't a thing then, but like I up until Sunday was saying like, I see everybody as the same. Like when I look at people, I see, God, I see the divine, and that's all fine and good. But where I was wrong, and I hope everybody that's watching this now or in the future, where I was wrong was that it's nice that I wasn't adding to, this venom that's being spewed. It's nice that I'm not doing that, but it's equally wrong to not help out in the actual, the changing of things, in the changing of people's minds, and the using, I always talk about using social media for good, right? And to not be, sharing the opposite side of things so people can see, because what gets bigger is what you look at, right? So whenever you're not focused on, when you're focused on negativity and you're focused on all of this, like the bashing and stuff like that, then that's your focus, right? But whenever you instead focus on like the like, let's make sure that people of color are being treated the same way that we are. I was not even, it's crazy. Like my mind is still blown. I'm obviously still processing because I have so much space between my sentences as I'm talking. Like I'm still processing the fact that like, that life is so extremely different for people of color than for white people in the United States and other places as well. But we're talking about the United States right now. Yeah. What are your, do you want to say anything about that? I'm going to go to questions here in a minute too.
Yeah. And you're right. You're definitely right. And I think too, a lot of it is that as I've been having these conversations with different people, a lot of them really have no idea about the history and why things are the way that they are. Like they have no idea. And
Right.
so I find myself sending them to watch different things. And it's been really helpful that Amazon Prime has been putting stuff for free so people can just go to their Amazon Prime account and watch it. But I think I sent you one, The Uncomfortable Truth. That's
Yes.
one that I've been sending to everyone to kind of as a starting point to just kind of get a broad idea of, you know, because some of my white friends have even said, well, I don't see how y'all are being treated differently. Like I don't see it.
Oh,
And, you know, my response is, well, I understand because I have to respect their perspective. You know, I
right.
understand how you would say that because you're not living it every
Right.
day. You don't see it because it's not in front of your face every day. Like
Yeah.
it's we live it. And so if you don't know the history behind why we're saying what we're saying, then
Hmm.
of course it's easy for you to say I don't see it. And you know, once you know the people that really want to know, they'll go and watch the video. I think it's maybe like an hour. I'm not
Hmm.
sure, but they'll come back and we'll talk about it. And there's usually tears, and there's usually, you know, I had no idea because none of this is taught in school. It's glazed over. Um, the slavery period is, if it's talked about in books, you know, it's talked about when we talk about Martin Luther King. You know, everybody knows who he is, but we
Hmm.
don't talk about the laws that were in place that kept Black people from purchasing homes. Even veterans, when they came back from the war, you know, they would give loans out to white families, but the Black families didn't have that. You know, people don't know about the redlining in cities where you know, loan officers would redline certain parts of the city, and certain neighborhoods would have signs up and say, we only want white tenants or white tenants only. So even if a Black family had money, they couldn't, there was nowhere for them to go with the money because it was like, well, we don't actually want you here. And you have to think about, there are still people alive. Like my grandmother is 91 years old. There are still people alive, white people alive that remember that.
Yeah.
And this is being talked about at the dinner table. And so moms and dads are talking about this, and it's in their family, and children are hearing this, and they're seeing the attitudes, and they're hearing the conversations. And then when they go out into the world, this is, you know, all they know is their white family. And then the media will spin a story to make you, if you're sheltered in that sense and you only have white family around you and white friends around you, the only experience you have with a Black person is what the media tells you,
Hmm.
right? And so then you come out into the world, and then it's like, oh, well, you know, what else do you think? What else do you know? You can only go off of your experiences until you figure things out for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, the biggest thing for me is that people just don't know. And those that really care to know, once they, you know, figure it out, it's like, man, I had no idea. Like I really had no idea.
Yeah.
And then they go back and try to apologize to me, like, and I've told them, like, I don't need an apology. Like I'm not asking for you to get on your knees and apologize to me. Like we are equal. That's all I ever wanted to get you to see, that, you know, everyone is equal, but we haven't been treated equal. And it's
Right.
like we have to talk about it. We have to
Right.
discuss it to make it, because if you don't think it's a problem, then how do we address it?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I heard somebody on Instagram, I don't remember his name, but I heard him yesterday, if not the day before, say something like, well, if the problem is in white culture, which that's the where it's coming from, right? So if the problem is in white culture, then the answer, the solution is in white culture as well. So it's not like we have to, for the people that are for the people that are watching this, like this is a coming of like it a loss of innocence is what it really is, or a loss of ignorance. Let's go ahead and just toss the ignorance aside, because A, it's not serving you, and B, there are people that are just like you that are living subpar lives, that are not, that there's no reason on the world, in the world, why. And the what my mind always goes to is the next generation. I always look at the kids, because
Yeah.
that's our, they're always the hope, right? The next
Right.
generation
Right.
is always the hope. and
Right.
and so when we look at our kids, what are our kids seeing right now? What are,
Mm.
like, in your home, in your family, in your walls. Like maybe you feel like you can't make a global change. Your global change literally starts within the walls of your own home, right? You change from the inside out. So that's, what are your kids seeing right now? And if you maybe if you feel guilty for things that your kids are seeing right now, or you feel like, I wish I hadn't done that, I really wish that I would have done different things, today is the day that changes. There's nothing keeping you stuck in your old behaviors except for yourself and choosing to be there, right? I also see that there are some people, and I was thinking, like, do I want to say this? Do I not want to say this? But I'm going to. So there's that. Oil up. So there are people that are taking vehement, polarizing stances on the gentleman's death, okay, in Minneapolis, and they're saying that's what this is all about, okay? It's a microcosm, yes. It's an event, yes. But you guys, what this is about, if you don't agree, or you feel like the media's doing something, or you feel like anything weird or sideways is happening with that, I challenge you to set that aside for right now and understand the actual issue is that people of color are not treated the same as white people in our country. Period. Okay? Whatever you feel about anything else so far as the media is concerned, weapons of mass distraction, all of the whatever, however you feel about any of that makes no difference to me whatsoever. Truth is that the people of color in this nation are treated very differently than the white people of this nation, period. And that's what we're talking about here. So like I just want to, like, in case anybody was say anything. I'm going to see if people have questions. If you feel like saying anything, you feel free, Marissa.
No, just to add on to what you were saying about, what our kids are seeing in our homes. I can remember back in third grade, I was actually homeschooled my entire life, save 1 year, third grade. My parents sent me to public school. And I remember I had never heard the N word, like outside of just like slang from like movies and things like that. But I was on the playground and I remember an 8-year-old kid, we were playing and this little boy said to me, I usually don't play with, and he used the N word, in kids. And that was the first time in my life, like 8 years old, that I experienced it from like that aspect. And it was like, I went home thinking, well, why not? Do you just not have friends that look like me, or you just don't want to? But as the school year went on, I just realized that he just wasn't, he just didn't want to be around me. And that as I got older, like incidents like that, I remember, I keep thinking like, well, it starts in the home. It has to start in the home, because I don't, I have other, white friends that don't think that way. And so it's like, it's gotta be something that they're hearing or seeing, or it's just common wherever they are in their environment. And it was just sad. It was just really sad, because, we're in third grade. Like, what do we, like, let's go play on the swing set, and, and then I can remember a time in college here, and you have to keep in mind, I'm in South Mississippi. So there's a lot of stuff that happens here in Mississippi that doesn't happen in the rest of the world. But in college here, in a small junior college here, I remember being in a chemistry lab, and I reached out to one of my classmates and I said, hey, you want to team up and do this project? And they were like, no, thanks, I've already got a partner, but I think you're really smart for a Black girl. I was like, what? Am I smart, or am I like, why did you have to tack on the end? And it's just stuff like that. It's like, and that makes me think, okay, well, in her mind, are Black people not smart? Like, are they not as smart as white people? Like, why would you say pretty smart for a Black girl? And it's just so much like little things like that that have happened. And that's minor compared to what my husband has experienced. Like, I can't speak for him, but he's told me things that will, would bring a person to tears. And it's like, well, that stuff happens all the time. And so for people to think that it's about this one incident, it's completely bogus, because you have to understand that most people of color have dealt with little tiny things like this all their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates a wound, small or big, that creates a wound. And a lot of times we suppress those things because we have to get on with our life. We have to get on with our day, right? And we don't know how to deal with it too. So it's like, this came to me, this is very hurtful, but I'm gonna suppress that. And you and I know that gets buried in your cells, in your body, and that causes all kinds of problems. And then now in the news, all we're being bombarded with is this video on repeat that is triggering wounds and painful memories and things in people's past that they haven't been able to deal with yet. And maybe they don't know how to deal with it, right? So it's not about this one incident. Like there's an entire group of people that are hurting, and it's painful when the pain that people of color feel is downplayed. And it's like, it's not just about this one incident. And if people would just, like I said, talk to each other and see what your neighbor's experience has been, then maybe the understanding would be there. So definitely not about an isolated incident at all.
Yeah, right. And yeah, that's, I can't add anything to that. Sarah said, yes, people need to be honest. If you don't want the real answer, don't ask. That was from the very beginning on reaching out to you in the first place. Let me see. Diana said, good afternoon, watching from Pennsylvania. Elena, absolutely. If we talk, we can figure out truth. It's not in the news. We're all in this together. There's truth. Truth. Do not rely on news sources for truth. Rely on somebody's mouth right in front of you. Like, speak to each other, communicate with each other, because I'm not going to get into that whole arena right now. We don't have enough time. But truth will be found with each other, with each other like this. This is where you're going to find the truth. Andrea, silence isn't good enough. Absolutely. Nicole, I absolutely love this, Martha. Thank you for being aware and doing what you can to recognize systemic racism. Thank you, Nicole. Nicole responded to a post the other day. She is, her family is from Mexico, and she said that she doesn't, if I remember this right, Nicole, she said that she doesn't go into a store and not buy something, even if it's really little, because she doesn't want to be accused of stealing something when she leaves the store. And that is just, that's like
that's commonplace. Like my brothers were taught that, like, and when you buy something, you make sure that you have a receipt and it's in a bag. Like, you make sure, like, even if the clerk doesn't give it to you, you ask for it. It's like,
wow.
Yeah, because it's so common to get pulled aside for thinking that,
Man. Nancy said, we need to have more conversations. Conversations build bridges. Hey, you guys, my challenge to you that are watching this right now, grab friends and have conversations. Take them live. Let's take it live. Do this stuff out there. Like, we need to be the news. Let us
For
be
real.
the news, plant my flag. Elena, it shouldn't be different except for embracing our differences. They're supposed to be beautiful and unique. Absolutely. Catherine feels so ashamed and sad. You're going to go through those things. It's a mourning of your innocence / ignorance, right? Innocence and ignorance are kind of the same thing in this case, in specific for white people, I think. Like, in my where I was at, I thought that I was innocent from being, racist or anything, because I was like, well, I don't see anybody as different, and that's not, like, I love everybody. But the loss of that innocence is the fact that, like, that's all fine and good, but you need to say something. That's you can't just stand by and watch somebody or know that is happening and not say something. That's the point, I think, of this entire thing here. Alex, what's the name of the Amazon program again? Do you want to repeat the name of that? It's Uncomfortable Conversations?
It is called The Uncomfortable Truth.
The Uncomfortable Truth.
Yeah.
Toby, I reached out to a friend yesterday. I reached out to a friend yesterday that shared personal history that blew my mind, local people, local issues that I never saw. My eyes and heart have been pried open. There it is. There it is. The thing, we can't be, I think that everybody grew up in a world where like, we've got a little bit of pride, right? We've got a little bit of like, I don't want to be wrong. And when you're shown this, you're shown that you were wrong, and you may have generations that were wrong. So you have to like be okay with looking at that and saying like, okay, the buck stops here. That is what was happening prior to understanding this now, and this is what it looks like now. But you have to be okay with being wrong. That's because you're probably going to find out you were wrong. Andrea, that lived excuse me, that lived experience. I see friends who are disabled, especially invisible disabilities, say similarly, it's heartbreaking to me. But one thing I can actively do is give my skills to puppy raise service dogs as a volunteer. There are things I can actively do in this as well. Just find your things you can do. Elena, the Tulsa Massacre, Black Wall Street was never talked about in school when I was growing up. Me either. Yeah, me either. There were we didn't find out about a lot outside of Martin Luther King. Like that was pretty much, and I still think, and that was limited in the things that we found out. And we need to be talking more. And that's where the educating between the walls of your own home happens. So, maybe not watching The Uncomfortable Truth with your kids, but understanding and like saying these topics, or maybe like if they ask questions, just being open and like normalizing it. Let's normalize asking questions. Let's normalize curiosity, right?
Yeah. And just to add to that, like a lot of friends in the white community have said, well, I've tried to start conversations and I've got nothing but like just hatred and backlash, like just nasty responses. And I can understand that. I'm not condoning why people would respond that way, but I understand that they may be coming from a real place of pain. You know, they may be in a space where they can't figure out how to express their thoughts to a white person. It's kind of like, well, why do you care? You know, or I don't know even how to explain it, but I hear that. I've been hearing that a lot. Like, I've been telling people, hey, you need to have the conversations, and they come back to me and said, well, I tried that and it's not working. So, you know, just understand that there are generations of people that are in a lot of pain and they don't really necessarily know how to process it. Maybe give them some time, and just make sure you're coming from a place of real concern and just not like trying to start a debate or trying to start an argument. You know, if this is your friend and you really want to know their experiences, they'll feel that, they'll understand that, and they won't want to lash out in hatred. Like, I feel like there's a collective work that needs to happen with both people, white and black, in both communities. And on one side, we've got to learn how to deal with the pain and the anger. On the other side, I feel like the white community needs to face the indifference, and just, you know, collectively, we've got to figure out how to do this, because there's a lot of healing that needs to take place, and it's not happening at all.
Yeah, agreed. I love what you said about basically the energy that you're coming from whenever you're reaching out to somebody. It can't be an agenda. It can't be something to check off your list. It absolutely needs to be something that you actually care about. And whenever, like, if this helps you at all, this is how I typically look at people that are in pain, because they have every right. They have every right to lash out. Anybody in pain has the right to lash out. That's their, it's their experience. The way that I look at people whenever they're in pain is that they are their 3-year-old version of themselves. And what would you do with that 3-year-old version of somebody? What would you do? You would love them. You would allow them to get out what they needed to get out, and then you would be there to like to listen, right? And to not take things personally and just allow them to be human. There's so much that just, I mean, if we're talking human equality here, then let's talk human equality. Let them be human as well. Let's let everybody be human in the process, and sort of like have their own grieving, their own, whatever the reaction is what the reaction is. It's what needs to happen for that person. But that's what I do, is I always just look at somebody as like the child version of themselves, because that part of themselves is still there. It's just gone through a bunch, right?
Right.
Nancy, be intentional to immerse yourself in other cultures, and it helps to learn. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Greta, yes, our family generationally have taught this. Yes. Denise, Marissa, I appreciate your calm demeanor through your explanation and education. She's great, isn't she? Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you.
Nancy, you mean to say treated differently from all minorities? I'm sorry, I don't remember what I said, but yeah, you're likely right there. I probably misspoke. Elena, it definitely starts with us at home. Yes, 100%. Elena, I just choked on that. Okay, I'm not sure what that was. See, this is what happens when I go back and I read through stuff afterward. I'm not sure where it was. Elizabeth, Marissa, tell us about some of the specific things recently you've seen on social media that are most hurtful to people of color. Are you okay with saying that, Marissa?
Whew.
I know, right? That's why I asked.
I didn't bring the Kleenexes in the office today.
Oh my word.
I can just say that the one that stood out to me the most was just the laughing and the mocking of just the jokes, the memes, those types of things really just affected me, because it's not even about the incident of what happened with the police officer and Mr. George Floyd, but it wasn't even about that. It was just in general, like generalized, well, that's just Black people, or that's that's just how they are, and laughing about it. And it's just like, well, hi, Black person here, your friend who was just with you the other day. So it's just stuff like that, just like the laughing and the mocking, and just being made a joke, being made light of, when it's really, it's very hurtful. But I don't, like I said, it's just so commonplace in some people's homes and lives to where they don't even realize it.
Yeah. And you guys, you may or may not know this. I know some of you know Marissa, but not everybody does. Marissa's raising 2 boys in this. How old are they? They're just little.
They're 5 and 2 years old.
5 and 2. Yeah. So seriously, cutest kids ever. But she's raising 2 boys in this, where there's so much of this stuff going on that I can't imagine. So we talk about being a Black person in the US right now, but now let's layer on a mom of 2 kids that are coming up that, that's a whole nother conversation for another day, right? Like that just goes deep, right?
Yeah.
Ryan, the triggers are real too. I appreciate y'all having this conversation. Kayla, how does one approach the topic without accidentally coming off as offensive? That's a good question.
That's a really good question. And I think it just goes back to are you coming from a place of actually wanting to have a conversation with your friend? Or are you just trying to have a debate or argument or prove a point? Mm-hmm. Really, I think if you ask people for their experiences, they'll share with you. Mm-hmm. They want to be heard. They want you to understand their perspective. Like, just, sitting down, having a cup of coffee or tea with your friend and asking them, hey, how are you? What's been going on? And like, I don't think any person is gonna be offended by that. They shouldn't be offended by that. Just make sure you're coming from a place of actually wanting to talk to your friend and hear their perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Then Ryan said, whoops. I just joined. My husband and I were just talking last night and wondering, how do you start the conversation? I know that sounds so simplistic. So that's just the same idea. Elizabeth, I think we need to know how to purposefully avoid these things. Avoid what things? Tell us about, the things that have been so hurtful, how to purposefully avoid these things. You guys, I believe, and this isn't about me at all, but I believe that the way that we purposefully avoid them is that we're showing up in love anytime that we say anything at all. And it's gone sideways whenever it's been like, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to answer that. I'm going to let you answer that, Marissa.
I agree with you though, with just showing up and being there, you know. Yeah. And again, you can't know that something is hurtful unless y'all talk about it. Like it goes back to having conversations instead of just, you know, repeating what you hear or sharing the latest meme or sharing the latest video. Like it just really needs to be talked about more. And I know it's not talked about a lot right now, but
yeah,
it needs to be talked about more. That way people can be aware. Because it's mind-boggling to me how many people in my circle like had no idea. Like,
right. Yeah. Here's what I see. We talked about this before we went live, but here's what I see on the internet. What I see is people doing this whole like baby bird thing, right? And what it is essentially is one person says one thing, whoever. One person says one thing, another person's like, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to repeat that, right? And without even thinking about it, turn around and say that thing to somebody else. And then it's like, and when I say baby bird, it's like somebody's, here we go, puking in a bird's mouth. And then that bird is like puking in another bird's mouth. And so like, it's basically just, it's spreading these messages that are extremely divisive, extremely polarizing. And really what it's doing at the end of the day, it seems like, and maybe I'm wrong, right? I'm sure you guys will let me know if I'm wrong. But it seems like it's people trying to be relevant or interesting or whatever, or just get some attention instead of actually breaking down to a layer of commonality and a layer of let's all be real with each other, because they get so much more attention with others, this crazy stuff that they post. That's just my take on it, but that's what
it gets a reaction out of people.
Yeah. Ugh, don't be that person, you guys. If you're on here, don't be that person. Elizabeth, yes. Catherine, truth. Ryan, the uncomfortable truth from Amazon. Thank you. Andrea, you have to be okay with being wrong. Yes. Ryan, me neither. Sharon, I started to share contributions of Black inventors and pioneers to educate people on the many contributions of Blacks in America. And we shouldn't have 1 month, or should be a part of American Her Story. Yes, we should. It should always be a thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Toby, and now the rally in Tulsa on Juneteenth. We're not even going to get into that. Nancy, we need to intentionally model it. There it is, modeling behavior. Ryan, yes, we have been normalizing our conversations about race in our home. Sharon, part of the ignorance of what we've done positive instead of painting negative images. There we go. Kayla, oops, let me see. Kayla, not to downplay this conversation, but I hope this conversation brings other groups out of the dark as well. Domestic violence warriors, hidden diseases, etc. We need to fight against ignorance in so many areas. I agree with that. We're talking about people of color today for sure. But yeah, I all of everybody needs to be raised up if they need raised up, right? Toby, yes, I've been asking so many questions, and I always start with, I apologize if I say the wrong thing. I am so outside my comfort zone. We were raised not to talk about race. Oh, wow. Just not even talk about it, huh?
Yeah. I have a best friend who told me that she was raised that way.
Really?
Yeah, like don't talk about it, ignore it. And learned later that it was that way because her family was really deep into a Ku Klux Klan, and that's really like a huge thing here in the South. And they didn't want that to get out. And but
Oh my
they would
goodness.
get in trouble if they talked about race in their home.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Andrea, it's not the responsibility of people of color to educate white people. There it is. Elena, I was one of 4 Jewish students in a high school of 1,200. Our temple was arsoned twice by age 8 and painted with swastikas. My grandparents had black neighbors who came home to my grandfather repainting their garage door where vandals had painted swastikas. He told them they got the wrong house. I'm still friends with their daughter 45 years later. How freaking cool is that? I'm just going to keep reading these. Let me see where I'm at.
Yeah.
Oh, we're almost to the bottom of it. Just in case you're like, well, I didn't really set 5 hours aside, Martha. Right? When people get angry, it's because they're hurting. Meet people where they're at. Let them know I didn't mean to upset you. I genuinely want to learn and find out how I can help to be part of the solution. Oh, I don't think anybody took it wrong. Sarah, I do that all the time with my transgender friend, former coworker, as is it cisgender person? That's something my brain just can't grasp at times. He's awesome though and pretty much answers any question completely willingly. Sarah, our society is so flawed in so many areas. Susan, we need more of these conversations. Yes, Greta, a lot of this goes back to treating others the way you want others to treat you. Yeah. Ryan, it's not a matter of avoiding it. It's a matter of preventing it from happening again. There it is. Susan, have always feared I would say the wrong words and cause more hurt. That's an interesting thing to talk about for a second. So people afraid to have the conversations because they're afraid to say the wrong thing. So I'm not gonna lie, before we did this live, like I was getting ready and I was, listening to my music and hyping up and everything like I do before videos. But in the same respect, there was like a shallow breathing that's not usually there before I do a video. And it was like I don't want to say the wrong thing. And now it's gone because we've gotten into it. But there was like, I don't want to accidentally say something racist. Is that like so there might be conversations that aren't happening right now because they can't call out that elephant and say, hey, listen, this is a new type of conversation for me. This is like a new place for me. So would you say for people to just call it out before they go so they can have it?
Yeah, like put the expectation up front, that way you don't feel blindsided if your friend says, you could say, well, hey, up front, I have no idea what I'm doing. And we're going to have to wade through this muck together.
Yes.
Because I want to know how to help. And, how else do I figure this out?
Yes.
And two, like, I don't know if you've seen that step, let me see, when did they do it? It was a study or a test that they did. They called it the doll test. And they put 2 dolls in front of 2 little kids or a bunch of kids. Do you remember that?
Yep.
I think a lot of it is just like, it's so ingrained into our nation to where people are like, okay, being racist outright, but like, again, it's just like, I didn't know that was racist. Like people will tell me all the time, I didn't know that was racist. And it's so deeply ingrained into this country to where we've got to start somewhere to start weeding it out.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to
I think it's just if you're scared to say something because you might say the wrong thing and you might hurt somebody's feelings, just calling that out oftentimes
Yeah.
keeps from hurting the feelings because they
Yeah.
know
Like
the intention isn't there.
exactly. Like set the expectation up front
Yeah.
and they'll know, you know,
Yeah.
and it won't, it shouldn't be a problem.
That's good stuff. Um, Kayla, my neighbor, is one of the best people I know. When we moved here, we would get really or when we moved here, I would get really dirty looks every time we wave at her. Finally, my ego got the better of me. I'm ashamed to this day to say I lashed out and I said, "What the hell is your problem? I'm just smiling and waving at you. I don't need your negativity." Turns out someone told her I was racist. I was so hurt, and it just proved I was a rude person. Um, well, there's a beginning of a conversation,
Yeah.
right? There's
Right.
the okay, I can see how that looked. All right, like I see how that just looked. So like, you know, and I'm not. Now let's talk.
Right. Now let's talk about it.
Yeah, right. Opened up the dialogue. There you go. Kareem, my 4-year-old, always comes out of his Sunday school class saying how much he had fun with his brown teacher and his brown friend. I'm at a loss how to correct his language. Is that offensive? How do I change his language? What are your thoughts on that?
My children, they identify, I mean, when they're describing their different friends, they'll say my white friend or my brown friend. Like
Mm-hmm.
kids are very descriptive little people. Like
Yeah.
at any given moment, my 4 or 5-year-old will say, "Mom, look at that man with the bald head out
Right.
in the grocery store." And it's just like, you know, they're very descriptive, and
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would take that as an offensive thing
Yeah.
because our skin is brown, you
Yeah.
know. Um, yeah, I don't think that's anything to worry about. And you know, a lot of times, I will say this, a lot of times it's very politically incorrect. Well, people will say, and I have my own thoughts on this. People will say it's politically incorrect to call someone black or a person of color, and you should say African American. And I don't agree with that at all, because
Okay.
there's black people in this country that did not come from Africa. Newsflash. Um, you know, I have a friend. Her name's Lenore. Her family, they're from Antigua. That's where she goes and she visits for like summer vacations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can call someone African American and they can get mad at me, be like, "I'm not African American. I've never been to Africa. I don't like, you know, I don't,
Yeah.
my heritage isn't there." So really, anybody can say anything to offend anyone at any given moment. It it's just, but I don't think your child saying that your teacher is brown and they're brown, you know, brown friends, kids, that's how my kids describe their friends, and nobody blinks an eye at that.
Yeah. 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 Um, let's see. Toby, clarification. My family, talked about everything in general. We were taught not to talk about race, politics, and religion. Elena, these are worthy conversations. Amen. So my challenge again to you, another call to action, friends, is to go do these on your own as well. Sarah, POC is people of color. Susan, yes, Martha, right on this point. Kayla, my great grandmother is from Georgia, so we grew up with heavy stigma from her, but my mom raised us not to talk about, oh man, why did somebody call me right then? But my mom raised us not to talk about race because it didn't matter. She thought if we didn't discuss it, we would never see it. She thought she was doing right and didn't know a different way to teach us. That is big. That is maybe what led to my whole thing, where I was like, well, I just see everybody the same, so I don't know why that there's a problem. So that's what would you say to somebody that's raising their kids like that? There's probably a lot of people raising their kids like that.
Oh man.
Right.
I have to let that one simmer.
Yeah, you're good. You want me to go on and come back to it? It's okay. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's both drink some coffee to that. All right. Sarah, then what is the best way for white people to get educated about the need for change, especially when said people don't see or accept the need for change is there? I'm not saying people of color owe us anything, but they're The experts. Oh, she was talking about people of color don't have to um, um,
Educate.
educate us. Yeah. Um, I think it's just, I mean, that part of the conversation feels like it's getting very heady. And if it's not sitting right here, if we're not sitting in our heart space, and it gets into this, and it's like, but how do we do this? And how do we do this? And how do we do that? And then it gets into a place that is no longer heart centered. So it's as it all comes down to, I believe what Marissa's saying, and I completely agree with her, is have the conversations. You will be educated in real time. You will be educated about things that you're looking to find out, and then you can ask questions, and then you can start following. You can start following different people of color, different Black people on Instagram, on social media channels. Be able to learn, immerse yourself in sort of this the global culture that we have. Like let's all get it, because right now it's segmented. It's like there's these people and there's these people and there's these people. Why don't we all just run amok? Why don't we all just get crazy and get in everybody else's audience, so we can know what it's like and we can educate ourselves from the inside? And that's the way I do things. I don't know. What is
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it's there's so much out there to where you can just watch a lot of documentaries if you want to just binge, pick a night, you and some friends, you and your spouse or whoever, and pick some documentaries, watch them, and then talk about them.
Yeah.
Have a discussion about what you just saw. Even I met a girl on Instagram the other day who reached out to me. I have no idea who she is, but she lives in, I think she said Utah, may have been somewhere else, but she told me that, I'm sorry to ask this question, but you're the only Black person that I know. Like I don't have any experience with Black people here where I'm from.
Yeah.
I was like, really? Like really? Like at all? And first I had to like get over that hump. I was like, Utah? And then like looking at it on the map, like, why is that? Like, are there not Black people or just not in your neighborhood or what? But she reached out, perfect stranger, and we talked. We have like a giant long thread of us just going back and forth. And she really just wanted to know, why I was saying the things that I was saying on Instagram, just about not, I was talking just about not feeling like getting my kids out of the house or not wanting to do the things that I'm usually doing, because we're in the same homeschool circle on Instagram, and we had never talked before this. Yeah. And so I think it's back to what you were saying. The fact that she has no experience with any person of color ever is just like, there's, get out on social media, just like what you said. Let's all just run amok together and get involved so that we can.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how do you learn about a culture if you're not exposed to it?
Right. This is how we use social media for good. This is how just get out there, get all in it. Janelle, yes, call to action. I am working out a live video with a friend of color, nervous, but want to support this change. Thanks, Marissa and Martha, for inspiring me to actually do this and follow through. Boom! Yes. Susan, when it comes from our parents, born in Midwest, grew up in the Deep South, totally different. Sarah, it's no wonder societal issues largely rooted in these three areas. Amy, but also read some books. So you want to talk about race, how not to be anti-racist, etc. Susan, love and learn. Ryan, I think the point about it's not a person of color's responsibility to educate us, is that they shouldn't have to come to white people to say this isn't okay. White people need to take responsibility for seeking out answers, starting conversations and asking questions, following different accounts, etc. Absolutely 100%. That is what this is all about, you guys. It's not, it seems like some people are trying to take a stance where, and it's their ego, they just don't want to be wrong, I think. But they're trying to take stances like, well, I shouldn't have to do this and I shouldn't have to do that. okay, let's set that aside. Let's set the ego aside for a second. If you love this person, if you love this fellow person on the planet, what are you going to do to support them? If they're not being treated well, if they're not being treated right, how do we stop this in a generational way? The way that we stop this is by learning more. So you make that choice. You make that choice. And it's not going to happen in a big global way unless you've done the inner work yourself. You make the choice, period, or else nothing changes in your world. Absolutely nothing.
Yep, I agree.
So what would you be, how to be okay. Amy said, so wrong, how to be anti-racist. That's where I was like, I think I'm reading that wrong, but I read it. I'm like the guy on the movie who just reads the teleprompter. I don't know. I'm just reading the words. This feels weird. Put a question mark at the end of it. Isn't that what he did? Anyway, so let's go back to that question and then let's finish it at that because it's 2:00 and we could talk about this all day, I think, but we won't. So that question of how do we what do we say to the parents that are not talking to their kids about race at all, like not making it an issue at all?
You know, I don't have any experience with that at all because I don't. The friends that are in my circle that have expressed concerns, they're doing those things. So I don't know if I had a friend that wasn't willing to do that and our little boys are friends and they're playing with each other, I would ask that friend, well, why not? Because it's a reality and pretty soon they're going to be exposed to it. And if they don't have your perspective that you're instilling into them, somebody else is going to instill a perspective into them. And it may not be the one that you like. It may not be one that's good for themselves or humanity. So what do you want to instill in your child? Do you want them to figure it out from the world, or do you want them to figure it out from you in the safety of your home?
Exactly. Boom. There it is. We can't act like it's not a thing. We have to talk about what it is. So the definition comes from us instead of someone else. Yeah. Boom. Pow. All right. Well, thank you everybody for engaging in this conversation. Feel free to share this. Feel free to do them yourself. If you felt like you needed permission from somebody to go and do this stuff yourself, you guys grab a free Zoom account, do a meeting like this, and record it and upload it. If you don't want to take it live, do whatever you want to do, right? But these conversations need to be happening, and it's helping everybody. We're helping everybody. Thank you, Marissa. I appreciate you for oiling up and
oh my goodness,
and doing this.
All the oils.
How do you feel afterward? Because I know how you felt before. How do you feel after this?
I feel like a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. Just because.
Likewise.
Just because, you know, it's one of those things where you want to talk about it, but you kind of feel like nobody really cares. Like, unless your friends come to you, like, but, you know, everybody else is there, you know, we have our own things going on. So,
yeah,
it's just kind of what it feels like. But I appreciate you reaching out to me and suggesting we do this. And you know how I felt before. I was like, I'm just going to message Martha and she's not going to do this.
Uh-huh.
But,
and then it happened. It happened. So. Awesome. Well, you have an awesome day. Everybody else that's watching, you guys have a good day too. And yeah, thanks so much.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye-bye, you guys.